we might get started, everyone. Welcome to the Public Health Unit PHU Immunisation Catch-Up online webinar. I'd like to start off with the acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and pay our respects to elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the cultures and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. Some housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout the session, please pop them in the chat. And if we have time, we'll try to answer these at the end. Any questions that we don't get to answer, I'll get the PHU to respond and I'll send those answers out with the slides and recordings. We would appreciate if you can complete the evaluation form that opens up when you leave the session this afternoon, just to ensure that we're continuing to provide relevant information for you. So as I mentioned, this session is being recorded and we'll be able to provide a copy of this recording along with your certificate of attendance and the slides. This will be in a couple of weeks and will be sent out to the email address that you registered with today. We also wanted to let you know to be aware that each state has a different immunisation program governed by their state public health unit. So the information provided by the Queensland Public Health Unit may not be relevant to some people attending from other states. The information provided at this webinar is specific to Queensland, and we recommend that you check with your local state public health unit for localised information. And today our presenter is Paul Dawson. He's the School Immunisation Program Coordinator from the Public Health Unit. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Amy. So what we're going to look at today is Vaxelis, which is the new hexavalent vaccine on the schedule for 2, 4 and 6 months age points. We'll have a look at Shingrix as well, which is the herpes zoster vaccine that's due to replace Zostavax on the schedule. We'll have a quick look at the free flu vaccine, as well as vaccine errors, some basics around catch-up, also look at some air hints, and we'll also round it out with a look at measles. Okay, so Vaxelis, it's the new hexavalent vaccine on the schedule. It came on the schedule on the 1st of July. It's a new vaccine. It can be used for catch-up as well, similar to what Immunisation Hexa can at any child under the age of 10 years old. Big points about Vaxelis is that it comes in a preloaded syringe, which is extremely helpful, considering there have been some errors around Hibrix, the pellet with Immunisation Hexa not being mixed with the diluent in the syringe. So that will certainly be helpful with reducing the number of errors occur there. But of course, given that the two vaccines can be used at the same time and one is to be mixed and the other one isn't to be mixed or doesn't need mixing, the practice nurse is still going to have to be switched on as to what vaccine they're actually giving at the time. So hopefully it won't lead to more problems. Now the components, as you can see there on the screen, are very similar. There is a couple of extra strains regarding pertussis, polio, and the Hibrix components in the Vaxelis. Note there is if you start the schedule, the 2, 4, 6 month course with Vaxelis, it is preferred if you can to complete it with the same vaccine. But of course, if that's not possible, please don't delay giving the vaccine. Just continue on as they are interchangeable. So we have later on in the year, expected around November, we're going to have a transition of Zostavax to Shingrix. Of course, Shingrix is an inactivated vaccine. So we would which means that it's able to be given to people who are immunocompromised. So it's not a live vaccine like Zostavax is. Shingrix comes in a 2-dose course with an interval of 2 to 6 months between doses. It's expected to go onto the schedule for people over the age of 70 and for Indigenous people over the age of 50. And for some medical at-risk conditions, people over the age of 18. But it's only funded for certain medical at-risk conditions. There are some specifications around giving Shingrix vaccine after Zostavax or after having an episode of herpes zoster, with a recommendation in the Australian Immunisation Handbook of waiting 12 months afterwards. In the situation where Shingrix has been given first, and there's a consideration to giving a Zostavax afterwards, there is no recommendation around that. So that's something the doctor will need to consider and determine the benefits and risks of giving that Zostavax second. So far, there is no evidence for a booster of Shingrix anytime or after the vaccine. So we just look at the flu vaccine now. As you're probably aware that it was made free in Queensland from last Saturday. That was in response to increased numbers of influenza disease and also a low uptake across Queensland. So it's basically the same as what happened last year. If you have any inquiries about this program, please go to that email link that I put on the screen there around flu vaccine 2023. As per the previous year, there is no recommendation for a second dose per season unless you are an infant and you're receiving it for the first time. Then, of course, you have 2 doses 4 weeks apart. Now, regarding that, whether there is a second dose, the AIH states only 1 dose per season, and the Public Health Unit cannot recommend anything different to that. Now, the GP, of course, can look at each circumstance and weigh up the risks and benefits for their patient. And as we know, if you get a flu vaccine early in the season, when it is first available, you know, and you happen to be traveling later on in the year, and going to the Northern Hemisphere, of course, there is the potential, you know, to approach the GP and determining your risks, see whether there is a benefit to that. But of course, we can't step outside the Australian Immunisation Handbook recommendation of 1 dose. Anyone who booked a flu vaccine last week, you are able to put in a submission to see whether they can get and apply for a refund for that person. When you're giving flu vaccine, please make sure you have the age-appropriate dose, as there have been a few errors regarding children and also people in the over 65-year-old bracket, and it does create a bit of concern for the patient. So what else is new? We have pneumococcal vaccine, Vaxneuvant, and a 20-valent Prevnar vaccine that has been registered by the TGA but is not currently on the National Immunisation Program or funded as yet. It will be interesting to see where they fit into the schedule. We have HPV vaccine, just going to go over that it only requires 1 dose up to the age of 26. Greater than 26 years of age, you require 3 doses, and that's not funded. If you are immunocompromised and less than 26 years of age, you have 3 funded doses, and they have extended the age to 45 years for males, but of course it's not funded over the age of 26 years. We get the question often in the public health unit around people that are over 26 years of age plus, and whether they actually should be considering vaccination with HPV, and really that is a discussion for the patient and the GP, taking into such risks as a history of cervical cancer in the family, whether that person is actually just out of a monogamous relationship. So it is something that can certainly be discussed and considered. Pharmacies will be able to provide all the national immunisation programs from 2024, provided they are a registered vaccine service provider. And just a reminder that COVID and flu vaccines can be given at the same time or any time thereafter. So no required interval between the vaccines. Bexsero is a 3-dose course for Indigenous infants with 2 primary doses 8 weeks apart and 1 dose at 12 months or 8 weeks after the second dose, whichever is later. I know from looking at the Queensland schedule, the way we have it, it can be a little bit confusing. So just 2 primary doses for Indigenous and 1 booster dose at 12 months of age. Of course, for a medical at-risk Indigenous person, they have 3 primary doses, okay, and 1 at 12 months of age. Bexsero is a catch-up to less than 2 years of age only. Okay, we'll have a look at vaccine errors. So it's been a tough few years in the health service industry. There's been quite a few demands placed on service provision in the health industry, and that's put a lot of pressure there. So we have noticed that there have been more errors than normal. Why exactly? I think it's just all the ongoing pressure and the working so quickly within your workspace. So there's just a few things I'd like you to go over when you're getting your vaccine ready for your patient. So these are the checks. You have the right patient, of course. You have the right birth date, and you've calculated the age, that you've got the right vaccine for that age group as per the National Immunisation Program, and check out you have the right route of administration. Look, nobody likes, to make mistakes, and nobody takes it well. Everybody feels terrible after they make a mistake. We are human. Just remember, we are human and we are prone to making mistakes. But there are a few things you can go through so as to limit that risk occurring. So go through these steps that I've just mentioned then. Don't be put in a position where there is an increased risk of making that error. Okay, so try and take the time to make sure that you can check all those things. Check them once in the treatment room while you're drawing them up. Get a second person to check what you're doing, okay, and make sure they're checking thoroughly with you. And then before administering, check again at the bedside. As I said, nobody likes to make mistakes, but try and use that as a motive for and a reminder that, you know, these things have to be checked on a regular basis. Look at why it happened. Look at why it happened as a team in your workspace, and try and work out how you can actually reduce that risk. Some of the common errors that occur are that we get the wrong age appropriate vaccine, especially with the flu vaccine. I mentioned that earlier, occasionally with the COVID vaccine. So what do we do after? We make sure we're transparent, okay? Just make sure, you know, check, you know, that we can see how the error occurred. Check also that we've contacted the patient or the parents and let them know what's happened. Of course, offer full support to the patient and parent at the time. Let them know about the possible reactions from that vaccine. If you feel that it's a benefit, always ring later on to the next afternoon, that afternoon or the next day, and see how they are. Take a good look at how the error occurred. What are the actions that actually led to the error? Implement a strategy if you can to mitigate that risk if it's required. Discuss that with the team, and document errors in your patient chart, of course, and upload that vaccine onto air, as all vaccines need to go onto air, even if they're incorrect. Most of the time, errors that occur are not due to skill deficit. They are the result of process flaws, okay? Okay, we'll have a look at some basics around catch-up. For those of you who've been in practices for a while, normally we do a much longer session face-to-face, either at Lutwyche or we were providing them at North Lakes. We'll see if there's enough feedback. We could dedicate a whole session to doing catch-up, but I found that it has been a much better session when you're face-to-face and it's interactive. But anyway, we'll have a look at some of the basics of catch-up. So the first thing you need, of course, is a current and accurate immunisation history. So in some situations, you will have an overseas record. So the first thing you need to do is try and fit that record onto the Australian schedule or get it translated. Once you have those vaccines and worked out what the person has received, I suggest that you use a catch-up worksheet, which is available on the PHN website. And there's also a table within the AIH that you can use. There's a number of worthwhile resources in the AIH as well, and I've put the link there. There's a number of tables that will actually provide you how many doses they're supposed to have had the child is supposed to have had by a certain age, the intervals between the doses, and there's also a table there for the youngest age for certain vaccines. So you take your worksheet and plot the vaccines already given onto the worksheet, and then you can highlight the vaccines that are required. So prioritise your vaccines. So such as a catch-up I did just a moment ago, I got off the phone from a doctor. The patient hadn't had any 6, 12 months or 18 months vaccines. So logically, you would start with the 6 months vaccines, thinking that that's, you know, what they need the most, when it actually is the case that they need the MMR at 12 months and the Nimenrix the meningococcal ACWY are the priorities vaccines in that catch-up, due to the fact that that patient has no protection from those diseases, as they haven't received those vaccines as yet. Hex is important, but not as important because they've already received 2 previous hexes. So, of course, you give those priority vaccines first. You look at the interval between your live and like vaccines. When I say like vaccines, I mean vaccines that have the similar antigens, such as MMR and MMRV, and also Infanrix Hexa and Infanrix or Infanrix IPV. So you look at what intervals they need to be apart. Map a catch-up schedule on your worksheet and discuss with the parent when they might be able to come back or when you need them to come back, when the intervals are, and get them to make those appointments before they leave. As with the AIH, the philosophy with the catch-up is to provide as many vaccines as you can as soon as possible so as to protect that child. Enter the vaccines onto air. Pay particular attention when you're entering onto air to the dose numbering. A bit of a note here, when you're entering overseas vaccines, you may need to break that vaccine down into its antigen components to match what the air vaccine selection offers, or simply due to the fact that they have different vaccines and those antigens will have different numbers or dose numbers. Okay, we'll just have a look at an air record, as there has been some questions coming through about air records. So this is a snip off air, and this is once you find the patient on air and you scroll to the bottom, this is where your immunisation details are. So if you right-click on that Generate Immunisation Certificate, the window here, I think, can you see my cursor there, Amy? Nope. Okay. If you right-click on there,
Sorry.
generate.
Oh, yeah, I can see your cursor.
Yes, that one there.
Sorry, thank you. Yep.
So if you right-click on there, that will bring you up the COVID immunisation history for the patient and prints it on a nice coat of arms. So that's very helpful for the parent. So if you click on the complete immunisation history statement, the circle up the top here, right click on that, you will then get this immunisation record with the coat of arms there, which is very helpful for the parent, not so helpful for yourself, but a lovely copy for the parent. If you click on the light shaded green area in the top here, you will get this immunisation record. This is the immunisation record that you're after. And you're after this immunisation record because it will show you the batch numbers, it will show you the dose numbers, and it will provide any, sorry about that, it will provide any clue here as to why the parent has received a letter. So any kind of error code will come up there that you can hover over, and those are, you know, repeat antigen, dose not accepted, things like that. So when you have this certificate, you can look at your dosing numbers, you can look at your intervals as well, and there will be clues as to why the parents have received a letter stating that their child is behind for certain vaccines. Okay, now we're just going to have a quick look at measles. Measles has been in the community and in Queensland as well as New South Wales of recent. And measles is very, very infectious. So it, you know, and it spreads very, very quickly. So we'll just go over the measles. So there's a 2-dose schedule on the National Immunisation Program that's routinely given at 12 months and at 18 months as an MMRV. 2 doses are funded if you are born after 1966. Now, they've chosen the year 1966 because they consider that measles was circulating in the community up to 1966. So most people who were born before then would have already had measles at some stage. If someone says they have had 2 doses of MMR, if they don't have a record, our recommendation is for them to receive the vaccine. If they say they have had the disease, it's still worthwhile vaccinating if they are willing. Normally, if we're following a measles outbreak, we will be looking for recorded doses or taking a blood specimen to check serology. You can receive measles MMR vaccine from 6 months of age if you are going to a measles endemic country, and we will fund that. Because it's before 11 months of age, you will need a repeat dose when you return or at 12 months of age. If it happens so that you are over 11 months old, but not 12 months old when you are going overseas, you can have that vaccine and it doesn't need to be repeated. A couple of you may remember that a few years back when we had a large measles outbreak and were vaccinating at the St. Lucia University there, that the chief health officer actually recommended that any child over the age of 6 months could be vaccinated simply due to the fact that we had an outbreak in the area at the time. If a child comes from overseas and they have had measles and rubella vaccine with no measles, mumps and rubella, we don't count that dose. And frequently with children that come from overseas to Australia, they do, especially from Southeast Asia, they'll have a measles vaccine or a measles rubella vaccine at about 9 months. So when they come into Australia, they need to have MMR. So it's very strict around the 2 MMRs, the second one, of course, being in the MMRV. If a child's over the age of 4 years, they can have the MMRV as the first MMR vaccine quite safely. Younger than 4 years of age, they should have an MMR first. Okay, so these are the references that we used to develop this PowerPoint. And that's about it for the day. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a great day. I've finished a bit earlier than what I thought I would. If you can direct any questions and feedback to Amy, that would be much appreciated.
That's right, Paul. Did you want to answer any questions now? I've got a few.
Sure, I can answer questions. Yep.
Okay. So the first question, Zostavax Shingrix, is it just 70 with the catch-up period ending, or is it for all 70 plus?
The Shingrix will be for all 70 plus. I don't know whether it will stop at 80 like Zostavax did. So that we're yet to be provided the specifics around that.
Next question, what would be the rationale behind giving Shingrix to immunocompromised people without the previous history of chickenpox disease? I had a specialist who requested this, and I'm just wondering what would be the rationale for this, as I thought you can't get shingles if you haven't had chickenpox in the past.
Yeah, I think the rationale is probably that Shingrix, is a worthwhile preventative vaccine. Person who's immunocompromised will normally have worse symptoms if they do develop herpes zoster. Shingrix is much kinder on the body to what Zostavax is. And of course, Zostavax really shouldn't be given to somebody who's immunocompromised. So I see it as more of a preventative measure for that person that's immunocompromised.
Okay, thank you. Do we have to keep a list of names of patients for the free flu vaccines using our private stock that we will later claim for payment, as opposed to just claiming the number of flu vaccines used?
Oh, look, I'm not certain about that, but I would think that you would probably need to support how many private vaccines you've given out there. So I would be keeping the names, but there is that link on the PowerPoint just to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. What if they were born during 1966? Did they receive any immunisations?
Oh, MMR?
I'm not
sure. More than likely not.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that anybody born, it says after 1966, but I think we'd be splitting hairs there. So if somebody comes in who was, born in the year 1966, I would be erring towards the side of providing them a funded MMR.
Okay. Yeah. Can Bacillus and Bexsero be given on the same day?
Yes, they can. They can be administered with all other infant vaccines. I know there was a query earlier on about that, but that has been confirmed now that they can be given on the same day. It would have been a major upset to the Indigenous infant schedule, if they weren't able to be given it on the same day, but they are.
Okay, great, thank you. Are the 2 doses of MMR free even if the patient has no immunity but was vaccinated as a child?
No. If they've got record that they've received 2 doses of MMR and you take serology and the serology comes back negative, any further doses they need to pay for.
Next question, if over 70 and had Zostavax on NIP, I think what National Immunisation Program, more than 12 months ago, can they also get Shingrix on the National Immunisation Program?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. Yeah, and I think in the slide there it recommends that you should wait 12 months after Zostavax to have Shingrix. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Will you guys share PowerPoint with participants? You guys are happy to share that, aren't you, Paul?
Yeah, yeah, certainly.
Yeah, so that'll go, I'll send that through with the copy of the recording and your certificate of attendances. So
Yes.
Next question, do you need batch numbers for overseas catch-up immunisations? If you can't answer now, we can always put that.
No, look, I think sometimes, you're busting to work out exactly what vaccine they had, let alone be able to read the batch number. Provided that there's a vaccine identified, there's a date, and there's a signature or indication that the vaccine was given, I really wouldn't be concerned about batch numbers.
Okay. Can COVID vaccination and Becerra, is it Becerra? I don't know. It says here Berserk, but I'm guessing that's not right. Can COVID vaccination and Berserk be given at the same time? Becerra,
Yes.
was it Becerra?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, COVID can be given with any other vaccines, just like all our other vaccines at the moment. You just wouldn't give the same antigen vaccines on the same day.
Okay, excellent. And sorry, she did person asked that question,
okay.
Did make sure say, oh gosh, I can't speak now. They did mention it was supposed to be Bexero, not Berserk.
Okay.
So next question, can people younger than 50 receive Shingrix?
I'd have to look. I don't know whether it's registered for under 50. But I mean, you know, in these types of situations, I mean, the TGA register the vaccines, yes, but a GP, provided, you know, it's safe to do so, they can recommend or, you know, prescribe these vaccines outside that normal age group. But it's, you know, it has to be a discussion between the patient and the GP weighing up the benefits and the risks of doing so. But Shingrix seems to be a well-tolerated vaccine. And as I said, it's inactivated. So it's, you know, it doesn't have the potential to cause that immune response like an immunocompromised person does with receiving Zostavax.
Somebody's written here, so I'm guessing it's relating to a question you answered earlier, but they said, hang on, that doesn't sound correct. So if they've had Zostavax, they can have Shingrix 12 months later.
I think, no, I think, what did I have on a slide there? I had, if you had Zostavax, you could have Shingrix 12 months later, or if you had the herpes zoster, I think you could receive. Just going to go back through my notes there.
Yeah.
Might be a moment. Okay. It's not recommended to receive Zostavax if you have received another zoster vaccine. So they're referring to having Shingrix there first and the Zostavax later. Whereas if you have the Zostavax, you can have the Shingrix 12 months later, or if you have had an episode of herpes zoster, you can have Shingrix 12 months later. Okay, you do develop some immunity once you've had the herpes zoster disease. That's why they hold off with the vaccine itself. But the other way around, that's questionable, and there are no recommendations if you receive the Shingrix first.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've still got some more, sorry. They're coming in.
Yeah.
Thick and fast. Will Infranix Hexa, sorry if I'm not pronouncing these right, be phased out, or will we continue to receive both vaccines?
No, at the moment, you're going to continue to receive both vaccines because our vaccines at one stage were purchased by the state. So the state could have a say in what vaccines they wanted on the schedule. But now the vaccines are all purchased nationally, and there has to be seen to be a market share. Okay, so that means that's why we're getting, you know, MMRV as well as Procrod, and we're getting Infanrix as well as Tripacel, and we're getting, you know, Infanrix Hexa as well as Vaxelis. You know, once the vaccine's approved, that means that, you know, there has to be that market share. So we are going to get both vaccines.
Okay. Evelyn, sorry, I'm just not sure what this is referring to. You've put in the Q&A. Is it registered for people over 40? So if you can just let us know what that's referring to. The next question was, so our 1,461 70+ patients can all get their Shingrix at the moment, so a total of 2,922 doses? Question mark.
Got some large numbers there. Okay. Gee. Look, I think they can. I think they could get their Shingrix. Of course, I'll have to wait for advice from the Queensland Immunisation Program. We'll have to wait and see about that. I mean, I think it would be okay, but well, maybe they'll say that no, over 70 years of age, if you have already received a Zostavax, you can't have a funded Shingrix. I thought you would be able to have a funded Shingrix, but I think we'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
Good question.
A nurse I know who works at a different practice said they received information about a baby not having a live virus if they have a positive heel prick at birth, but to treatment they will have for some rare syndrome.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's come up just recently. I'm going to have to respond to that question I'll send you an email back because I don't have that documentation with me at the moment. But generally, there's a heel prick done at birth, but sometimes due to a situation occurring at birth, that heel prick is missed, and the parents then get notified that there will need to be a blood test done. Yeah, look, I do know what you're talking about, but I just don't have that information with me at the moment.
Okay, if I can leave that with you, if you can send that through with the slides when you send them to me, Paul.
Sure. Yep.
Shingrix can be given to under 50 years old, provided they are immunocompromised.
Provided they are yes, yeah. Well, it says there that it can be given to over 18 years of age if they are immunocompromised or medical at risk. But there's only a couple of situations where the medical at risk is actually funded.
Okay. What is the
so,
dosing?
I mean, if it can be given to people that are immunocompromised, it should be able to be given to people who aren't immunocompromised. But again, it will have to be purchased.
What is the dosing schedule for a 2-year-old requiring Bexsero for travel?
I do not have my Bexsero wheel with me, but I believe I'm looking, I'm sitting in Emily's office and I can't find her Bexsero wheel.
That's all right. I'll leave that with you to send through the answer with the slides as well, if you like.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yes, I think it's 2 doses. I think you can have 2 doses 8 weeks apart, but I'm not certain of that. So, but yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Nicola, I'm not sure what this is referring to, but Nicola's responded, think it's questioning whether shingles, if it's funded under National Immunisation Program, not that whether you can have it. I don't know if that's referring to Evelyn's question about, is it registered for people over 40? So sorry, guys, if if you want to send your question through to me, I can give that to Paul to get back to us with that. Once we were able to order Shingrix in November under National Immunisation Program, what do you recommend us to do to the remaining Zostavax we have in stock?
Oh, look, I'd say you'll get recommendations around that when Shingrix is available. The Queensland Health Immunisation Program should tell you what to do there.
Okay. Evelyn's replied to her. She's saying Shingrix is registered for people over 40. I was told this by GSK.
Okay. Okay,
Excellent.
thank you, Evelyn.
Excellent. I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but side effects for Vaxelis, is it the, oh, it's a question, sorry. Is it the same as Hexa?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I don't think, no, there's no different reaction you'd be looking for.
Somebody's mentioned, she said, sorry, the person's apologised for they've missed the first part of the webinar, but wanted to know if the new Vaxelis and Infinex Hexa are interchangeable.
Yes, they are. Yeah. It's preferred if you can start with the one vaccine to finish the 2, 4, and 6 month course with the same vaccine, but you wouldn't delay vaccination just because you don't have the same one. You would continue on. They are interchangeable.
A couple of people have mentioned that all Bexseros are now 2 doses plus a booster.
Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you. No doubt my wheel would say that, but I don't have it.
There you go. What age group can have free catch-up immunisations, and how many vaccines can we give for catch-up in a day?
Okay, well, that depends on the parent and the patient as to how many vaccines you can have at the one time. Okay, and funding for the National Immunisation Program up to the age of 10, there's those vaccines that are on your schedule are all funded. Okay, provided that patient's eligible, of course. And for over 10 to less than 20, we've got that follow on from the no jab, no pay incentive for to vaccinate adolescents. Okay, so there's a slight difference. Like anybody under the age of 10 should be having your Infinrix vaccines or quadricell, triplicell. Anybody over the age of 10 should be receiving your Boostrix or your Adacel. There's MMRV is not funded for over 10. They need to have a separate varicella if they're being vaccinated for MMR or varicella over the age of 10. Under the age of 10, they can have their MMRV. So there's a lot of the vaccines, except your exotic things like yellow fever and Japanese encephalitis, are funded up to the age of 20, which is really good.
With Bexsero for Aboriginal babies, is it due for 2, 4, and 6 months, then 12 months, or is the 6-month one only for immunocompromised babies?
Yeah, I know that's difficult to, it's confusing on the schedule. No, for Indigenous babies, it's 2 and 4 months, or 2 primary doses in the course, okay, and then a booster dose at 12 months of age. If you are medical at risk, that is where the 3 doses come in, 2, 4, and 6 months, and then at 12 months of age. So yeah, I agree. So that's why I actually added it in this discussion.
Or, how many live vaccines can be given together?
Well, generally, you'll only be looking at an MMR or a varicella. So if you're over 10 years of age, as I said, the MMRV is not a funded vaccine for over the age of 10. It is registered up to the age of 14, but it's not funded over the age of 10. So you would only be giving an MMR and a varicella, which are live vaccines, and you'd give them in the opposite deltoids. And yes, you could give them on the same day. I can't envisage a situation where you would be giving more live vaccines at the one time. But you can, there's no reason why not. And if you don't give them at the same time, you would need to give them 4 weeks apart.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. That's all the questions at the moment. So if there's nothing further, everyone can get back to their day, the rest of their day. If you do have any further questions or think of something, you can email them through to me at amy.thompson@brisbanenorthphn.org.au. And Amy is AIMIE, Thompson's THOMSON. And I can get that to Paul and get him to give us a response. And yeah, as I said, if you could fill out the evaluation form that'll open up when you leave this session, that would be much appreciated. And yeah, we'll send out everything to you guys just within the next week or two. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have
Bye.
a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.